Man, it's super quiet in the house right now. All the kids went to their grandparents' house for spring break, so it's just me and 6 animals. Notice I didn't say 6 pets. We used to have 6 pets, 2 dogs, 2 hamsters, Rhea, and a mouse named Mason. Well, I don't remember if I mentioned it or not, but Mason died. You see, with rodents, you usually fill their cage with like this paper stuff. And rodents, for whatever reason, like to bury everything. Their food dishes, all that. They like to bury their houses up, you know, just make forts basically like a little kid. Well anyways, Mason decided it would be a good idea to bury his water dish. So he ended up dying of thirst. I went up to check on him one day, I look in his cage, and he's just stiff. Yep, he buried his water dish and he died of thirst. But we still have 6 animals in the house. So I went to move our living room and dining room around. I basically swapped rooms. I put the living room where the dining room was and the dining room where the living room was. And as I'm moving this big armoire, is that what you call that thing? A mouse runs out from underneath the cabinet across the living room. And I chased this thing around for a while, was smacking it with a broom, and I don't know how they do it. They're like little magicians. Like you'll chase them into a corner and all of a sudden they just disappear. They're so fast you don't know where they went. So now I just have this mouse running around my house. And I've been hearing noises here in the game room, so it might very well be in here. As a matter of fact, after I'm done recording this episode, I'm about to take a trip to Lowe's and go pick up some mouse traps. But I do have some good news. The Corvette is finally fixed. After months of having this overheating problem, I finally bought a second new fan and installed it, and now it works like it should. And I ended up getting a refund for the first fan I ended up putting in there. So finally with the Vet fixed, I don't have to sit there at stoplights and sweat, wondering if it's gonna overheat or not. But even though the Vet's fixed, I do have a lot of other stuff going on in life right now. So videos may not come out every week anymore at this time. So I'm still releasing videos, it just may not be every week because I don't want to get burnt out either, especially when I know that this YouTube channel pretty much is never going to take off. And I'm also trying to spend more time with the family. When I first started the SNES Quest, I was releasing videos every single week, Saturday at 6 p.m. But like I said, these videos, they take so much work. I was spending pretty much all my time in the game room and not enough time with the family. And I'm going to tell you right now that family is a lot more important to me than a YouTube channel. But I'm still going to be releasing videos like I said, which is why I'm here now bringing you a video. And today we have 5 more games that we'll be adding to the collection. Let's check them out. And the first game up is Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf. Desert Strike: Return to the Gulf was developed and published by Electronic Arts, shooting into stores in 1992. Without warning, a madman has emerged in the Middle East and threatens to start Armageddon. The international community knows very little about this menace, the self-styled General Mubaba. But we have enough evidence of his military capabilities to take his threats very seriously. The president has chosen you to fly a series of dangerous preemptive campaigns in the desert to vanquish this maniac. Desert Strike is a shoot-'em-up game where you pilot an Apache helicopter. In each campaign you have multiple missions you must complete, and it's best to complete them in order. For example, the first mission has you take out radar sites first. This makes enemies slower to detect you coming. The whole time you're completing missions, you have to watch your fuel, armor, watch for MIA personnel, and keep an eye on your ammo. You can find fuel cells and ammo crates scattered around, and the location of everything from enemies to supplies is on your map. It's a well done system. As you find MIA personnel, you can take them to a landing zone and restore your armor. There are 3 different control options: with momentum, from the cockpit, and from above. All the angles look the same, but they all handle very differently. With momentum, The chopper continues moving a little after you stop. It's used for the most immersive gameplay. From the cockpit is the same as Momentum, but the chopper stops immediately when you stop pressing the D-pad. And From Above has a control set up in a north, east, south, and west pattern on the D-pad, and I found it really hard to get used to. You also have 3 weapon types: chain guns, Hydra missiles, and radar guided missiles. Radar guided missiles of course are the best, but you're limited to the least amount of them. The graphics and sound are good, and the gameplay is fun. Overall, Desert Strike is a game worth checking out if you're into these types of games. Desert Strike Return to the Gulf is game number 164 for the collection, and I got it from a store for $25. And at $25, that brings our total up to $29,053 for this SNES quest. And the next game up is Jungle Strike, the sequel to Desert Strike. Jungle Strike, the sequel to Desert Strike, was developed by High Score Productions and published by Electronic Arts. It shot on the store shelves in 1995. Kilbaba, the Desert Madman, is dead. However, he has a son, also named Kilbaba, that wants to avenge his death. Kilbaba has his father's wealth that he left behind, and the nuclear program, but he has no place to set it up. So he contacts Carlos Ortega, a South American drug lord that's had the US interrupting most of his shipments, and they decide to team up. They plan a nuclear attack on the US, so that way Ortega's losses are avenged, as well as Kilbaba's father. But it's still early in the planning stages and the US is aware of their plans. It's not too late to stop them. In Jungle Strike, you control a Comanche helicopter rather than an Apache. There are various other vehicles you can pilot later in the game as well, like a hovercraft and stealth fighter. The concept is the same as Desert Strike with a few differences. There are only 2 control options, momentum or no momentum. They took away the really odd northeast, south, and west control option. And in this game, you can hold the R button to strafe back and forth. The controls feel a little more smooth in this game versus Desert Strike as well. One downgrade is accessing the map is more delayed. I assume that's because it has better graphics creating a lag. The game is pretty difficult like Desert Strike, but the more you play, the better you get. What makes it difficult is you got 3 lives and then it's game over. And armor's limited. Overall, the game is fun and worth checking out just like Desert Strike. Jungle Strike, the sequel to Desert Strike, is game number 165 for the collection, and it cost me $28 shipped. And at $28, that brings our total up to $29,081 for the Super NES Complete in Box Quest. And the next game up is Urban Strike, the sequel to Jungle Strike. Urban Strike, the sequel to Jungle Strike, was developed by Granite-based software and published by Electronic Arts. It hovered on store shelves in 1995. No Desert Madman, no Drug Lord. This story revolves around H.R. Malone. He plans to destabilize the government. As you'd guess, Urban Strike has the same concept as the other 2 games. It has the same 2 control options as in Jungle Strike. They never did bring back the compass controls, but they did change up the configuration of the controls again in this game, making all 3 games different for the weapon firing. It can get really confusing. I don't know why they kept changing the controls amongst the games. In an Urban Strike, use the B button instead of the R button to strafe back and forth. And it feels extremely awkward. There was no reason to do that. That's not the worst downgrade in the game though. The frame rate is atrocious. They tried to pack so much onto the screen, which is cool, but it made the game embarrassingly slow. And the explosions look awful. In Urban Strike, your main vehicle is a Mohican. You also pilot other vehicles in this game, and you can also travel on the ground. But the manual makes no mention on how you do that. When I got to a mission that said switch to the Blackhawk, I had no idea where it was and completed the mission with the Mohican. You still only get 3 lives in this game, but I noticed the chopper can take a lot more damage. The game would be great if it wasn't for the horrible frame rate and choppiness. Overall, if you want to play one of the 3 Strike games, stick with Desert Strike or Jungle Strike. Urban Strike, the sequel to Jungle Strike, is game number 166 for the collection, and I pieced it together for $34. And at $34, that brings our total up to $29,115 for the collection. And the next game up is Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool. Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool was developed and published by Kaneko Jumping Into Homes in 1992. Chester is stuck at Four Corners Zoo and he orders a motorcycle so he can ride out of there. But Mean Eugene hid all the parts around the zoo grounds, and now Chester must go and find them all to build his bike and leave. Too Cool to Fool is a platforming game. As mentioned, you run around collecting motorcycle parts to build Chester's bike. You can also find other items along the way to help you out, such as a guitar which makes Chester dance and avoid getting hit by enemies nearby, sunglasses which darken the screen to reveal hidden power-ups, sneakers that allow Chester to run, and skateboards which unlock bonus levels. You can also find cheetah paws to replenish health, and there are many spread throughout the levels, making the game pretty easy. I planned on beating the game until I got cut off during a thunderstorm on a bonus level. The controls take a bit to get used to, especially with the vine swinging. There is an occasional slowdown, which can slightly hinder the gameplay. The graphics are really detailed and the music is upbeat. Overall, Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool is a decent game worth checking out if you're a fan of platformers. Chester Cheetah Too Cool to Fool is game number 167 for the collection, and price charting has it at $61. And at $61, that brings our total up to $29,176 for the Super NES Quest. Last but not least is Chester Cheetah Wild Wild Quest. Chester Cheetah Wild Wild Quest was also developed and published by Kaneko, jumping into stores in 1993. Chester finally completed his motorcycle and busted out a Four Corners Zoo. But as he was cruising to Hip City, Mean Eugene raced out from a speed trap and stole his map. He took a flight and scattered the map all over the US in 10 pieces. Now Chester must find all 10 pieces to make it to Hip City. Just like Too Cool to Fool, Wild Wild Quest is a side-scrolling platformer, but there are some big differences in the game. For starters, it's one-hit kills. If you get hit by an enemy, you go back to the beginning of the stage. You can find cheese puffs that will let you get hit one additional time, but they're very limited. The items all do different things too. In Too Cool to Fool, sunglasses would make the screen darker so you could see secrets, shoes let you run, and guitars made you dance and fend off nearby enemies. In this game, sunglasses are a 1-up, shoes are a 3-up, and guitars are 5-ups. You have the ability to run right when you start the game. Another difference is, instead of finding motorcycle parts, you're looking for the map pieces. Finally, you can do multiple jumps in a row, allowing you to reach hard to reach places. This all sounds great, but the controls are really unresponsive, and the gameplay suffers because of it. The graphics and sound are still excellent, but there's a lot of slowdown in the game, which also hinders the gameplay. One thing I do like is the clever names they use for the cities, such as Loston instead of Boston, Little Shock, Arkansas instead of Little Rock, and Unclearwater, Florida, just to name a few. However, if you're itching to play a Chester Cheetah game, you're better off going with Too Cool to Fool. Chester Cheetah Wild Wild Quest is game number 168 for the collection, and I pieced it together for $106 shipped. And at $106, that brings our total up to $29,282 for the Super Nintendo Complete in Box Quest. Let's get these games on the shelf. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to subscribe. I'm completing the entire Super Nintendo library, complete in box, right here on this show. Also, make sure to leave a thumbs up for Chester Cheetah. Until next time, I'm Gamer Wayne, and thanks for watching.